All right, I'm going to go over some colonias in Mexico City that might be interesting if you're looking at relocating there. We'll go over some main issues, earthquake risk, security, appreciation potential. Here are the seven variables we're going to discuss, and these are things to look at when you're considering. There isn't one neighborhood that I'd recommend that everyone go to. They all have their differences. So depending on what kind of liveliness, nightlife, if you want a residential community or if you want a very well connected near or near the metro. There's a lot of differences. Your price, your what you're able to afford, expat density. All these will impact your decision. But these are the seven I'd consider. The earthquake risk, I think it's worth looking at least being conscious before you commit to an area. Security, price, transit proximity, the feel of the area, vibe, expat density, and then 5-year price outlook. And again, some of these might be important if you're looking at it as an investment, might not be that important if you just want a lifestyle decision. So the soil issue, most of central Mexico is on this old lake bed and it's soft ground, and earthquakes that are far, far away will jiggle this jello bowl. And if you're in zone one rock, that's the best. That's solid. Polanco is the biggest example of a solid area that's not going to have as much damage from an earthquake. Lomas, San Pedro, y San Angel, these are good areas for minimal earthquake risk. Again, it's not like they're on a fault line like in Los Angeles where it's just going to hit everywhere. You don't know where it's going to hit. This is just this jello-y lake bed that's causing the issues. And again, the earthquakes can be far away. Zone two, this is your intermediate area that's decent, but firmer, but not as much damage. And then in Narvarte, Del Valle, Portales, Nápoles, parts of Coyoacán, and then the softest lake bed areas have the most historic damage, and that'll be your Centro Histórico, Roma, Condesa, Juárez, Doctores. So just be aware. Maybe you're not that worried, but it's again something to consider, and it's kind of interesting that you can actually do some avoiding. If you're vetting a building for earthquake safety, there's a real hard line. So after the 1985 quake, there was pre-1985 construction that's really risky. So you want to make sure it's been overhauled after the 1985 quake. The stress test really is the damage that the 2017 earthquake had. So if the building had zero damage in 2017, that's a good test that it's in an okay area, it's well built, it's going to withstand something. You have this dictamen estructural. A licensed engineer can give you this test, and this is your best evidence. You have an engineer looking at it past 2017, and they'll let you know if it has any issues. And then a practical rule of thumb, you want 2005 or newer and verified with a dictamen, engineer's report, and a clean 2017 record. That's kind of, I don't know, your due diligence to make sure you're not in a sketchy place. Is this really overblown? Or am I being a little nervous? I mean, I just remember seeing the footage from 2017 and getting nervous about people being trapped underneath. I guess that's going on in Colombia right now. Los Angeles, 60% chance of a 6.7 or more in the next 30 years. It's number one in the county. It's the number one county for annualized earthquake losses ahead of San Francisco. Mexico City, the amplification is not as big of a deal. It's the frequency. Quakes originate 300 kilometers away or more on the coast, but because of this lake bed soil, it amplifies like a bowl of gelatin. And the damage is hyper local. Again, Roma, Condesa are real jiggly. Polanco, Narvarte are a little bit, quite a bit safer. So unlike LA, the risk is addressable through buying decisions. It's worth an extra diligence precisely because you can act on it. All right. And who knows, maybe nothing will happen for 30 years, but I don't know. I think it's worth it. Security of neighborhoods. Benito Juarez, that area, has the lowest insecurity perception. There are two neighborhoods on our list that are worth some extra caution, Doctores and Centro Histórico. And it depends on the person. Some people might not worry as much, but just go into this open-eyed that you're making a decision. Petty crime versus violent crime. Most of the risk in the city is theft. Tourist nightlife zones, not violent crime. Yeah, and they've put what's the best soil and security factors, but there's more factors to look at. The metro line. The metro is great. I love the metro. It costs 5 pesos and you're like a quarter, 30 cents, or depending on the exchange at the time of this. But and you could go all over. They connect. It's so great. You really don't need a car in Mexico City. I mean, it would be nice in some areas you could get out of the city, but mostly between the buses, they have a Metrobús. So it has a dedicated lane bus. I love those. So low area of connection, less, I guess, transit connection. Coyoacán, it's such a pretty area, but you're going to walk 20 minutes to a station. It's in the center, it's very beautiful center and market. Love the area, but it's not as well connected. San Angel, Lomas de Chapultepec is really car dependent. I mean, I'd put Polanco as kind of car dependent a bit, but in areas, depends on where you are. But just factor that in. You can look at the metro stations, you can look at the Metrobús, and you can see where you want to be. Roma Condesa is pretty good. Narvarte, Escandón, San Pedro de los Pinos. Again, some of them, it's a big colonia or big neighborhood, and you just want to see, are you comfortable walking 10 minutes, 20 minutes? What's your comfort? Just consider that. And then high proximity. They're actually putting Polanco here. I didn't find it as well connected. Colonia, Juárez, sure. Doctores, all right. De Valle, Zapata, Centro Histórico is great. That's where everything converges. Super for transit. And again, it depends on what your needs are. If you're going to be using their excellent airports and just being there, enjoying the city, then you're zipping out and you're Airbnb-ing it. Great. That's wonderful. Then, some of the other factors might not be as critical. So nightlife versus residential, family, calm areas. Some of the lively social nightlife areas would be the Zona Rosa in Colonia Juárez. That's the nightlife central. Roma and Condesa have tons of bars, really nice restaurants. Doctores in Escandón have some less polish, they're saying. I guess I'm not real familiar with the nightlife in most areas, but especially those areas. Residential, quiet, family-like. Coyoacán, I know, Narvarte, Del Valle, Portales, Nápoles, San Pedro de los Pinos. Calm street, local street is empty around 9 or 10. Not as lively. Lomas de Chapultepec is gated, low density, very family oriented. Depends on what you're looking for. Coyoacán and San Angel, they're saying plaza, market energy, day to early evening rather than late night. So this can, of course, depend on what you're looking at. Airbnb, are you looking at buying something that you want for an Airbnb? There is a rule, 180 nights per year, legal cap per property. Plus, and this could change over time. There's a housing issue there. There's a cost. Costs have gone up. There's a housing issue. So just be aware. It could be cut more. Yeah. Listing concentration by, they're calling it boroughs, but really colonias. Roma, Condesa, Juárez, there's a lot. Miguel Hidalgo, Polanco, quite a bit. And then Juárez, much less. Benito Juárez, much less. The Narvarte, Del Valle, much less. More competition also means more demand. So it's not, oh, because they have a lot, avoid those. That's just a popular area that people are looking to rent. Building rules can be stricter than city laws. Confirm the condo regulation. You might buy into a condo that doesn't allow it. Rules can change. Roma Condesa have grown a ton. Between 2019 and 2025, they grew 74%. So rent increases have gone up and regulatory risk. So expats, I think it's an issue. Do you want to be where there's other either Americans, Canadians, English speakers, foreigners in general, Europeans, Asians? What kind of feel do you want in that area? Are you going to live there and you might get homesick and you want some foreign people there? Great, that's great. I mean, just be aware. So expat friction, foreign presence. So foreign born, there's less than 1% of foreign born people in Mexico. I mean, it's mostly Mexicans in Mexico. In the US, it's 13%. And that's just first generation, second generation, third generation. The US is way more diverse. It's super diverse country. Mexico's very homogenized or very, very same. Even religion and yeah. Foreign born of Mexico City, now it's more, 2 to 2.5%, but still, there's not a lot of foreigners living. Of course, there's tons of tourists. But 60% of those foreigners, 60% of that 2.5%, live in just two or three of the colonias, and that's going to be your Roma and Condesa areas. That's where a lot of Americans or I guess foreigners drift into. Most expats earn their money outside of the US and spend it locally. So that's a plus for having foreigners there. I mean, that's why they have the rules. I mean, Mexico could say, hey, we're just going to make it super hard for you to become a resident or citizen or permanent resident, but they make it pretty easy. They do have income requirements, but it's it's not that hard. And so they want it. They want us to spend our money there. It's good for the economy. So new money goes into restaurant services, retail, and you're not competing for local jobs. You're just hiring local. So it can be nice. The against argument is there's a concentration. Plus, these short-term rentals are pushing, and short-term rentals aren't all an expat issue. It's not like foreigners are the ones all buying it. There are local organizations, companies buying these and converting to short-term rentals. And that puts up short-term rentals everywhere. New York City, anywhere can be pushing up local rent. And so they're regulating, and that's what they should do. Roma Condesa rents are up 50% since 2020, and that's real measurable displacement pressure. And that's where there's been protests about that. So foreign demand plus these short-term rentals push out local long-term rentals. Another plus, it's a real culture and economic dynamism. I don't know. A diverse local business ownership and international connections. It can be great. I mean, I think that's one of the great pluses of the United States is it's diverse. You can meet people from all over, get a slice of different areas. It's great for culture, great for business. So Mexico has a real long history of welcoming foreign residents. I saw something where they're the number one country for welcoming foreigners. And this friction is very local. It's a handful of colonias, not the whole nation. Again, less than 1% is foreign born. So, I mean, I spent a lot of time in Hermosillo and Caborca, and I barely see foreigners there. I mean, it's not that it's this mass migration throughout. It is focused points where foreigners are concentrating. So if you are moving, be a good neighbor when you land. Learn Spanish, at least do the best you can. I know older people like me, it's harder to learn, but give it an effort. At whatever age you are, it's a good project. At least the pleasantries. Do what you can. Follow immigration rules. Support local businesses. You don't have to return home and buy everything on Amazon and then take it all with you. Adapt. Don't expect that it's going to adapt for you. Get used to local norms. Meet your tax obligations. If you're a Mexican tax resident and they're cracking down on this more, it's become more transparent. Follow the rules. If you're going to do an Airbnb, follow the rules. And just remember you're a guest. It's build your life within the culture that's there. You're not just trying to replicate your home and bring it with you. I think if we're all good guests, there'll be less friction. Here's a look at a 5-year appreciation lens. So not just will it make money over the next year, but in the long run, what are going to be some good investment opportunities or areas they'll appreciate? Now, some people might not care about this. You're moving for quality of life. You want it to maintain some value, but you're not as interested in, making a killing on growth. But factors to consider for if you're going to sell it in the future, leave it to family if you're going to sell it, if you're there for retirement and at some point may sell. Supports continued growth. So if there's a price gap between comparable peers, if there's strong Metrobús connections, if there's spillover already happening. So if there are people coming in to Narvarte instead of just Roma and Condesa, you could see Narvarte being a plus for them. World Cup 2026 infrastructure tailwind is a plus. And then things that could cap or slow growth, already mature prices. That's your Polanco, Roma, Condesa, Lomas. They're already prime prices. They might not have as much upside. Regulatory risk, Airbnb saturation, gentrification, flashpoint areas, that could be an issue. Seismic, structural concentration, these zone 3 areas. Peso dollar currency risk. So US funded, if it's from US funded, if it's not a local, or if it's not like Mexican buyers, that could be a risk. Our currency, US dollar, is pretty weak right now. And so, that can hurt an area. Centro Histórico's unique subsistence headwind. Yeah. Subsidence. I don't know what that point was. All right, neighborhood comparison. So we're going in order of price. Lomas de Chapultepec is our most expensive, low soil risk, but low transit proximity, car dependent, and that might be attractive for some people. And the vibe is residential. Polanco, pricing, they're doing pricing per square foot, per square meter, sorry, per square meter in Mexican pesos. We're looking at 85,000 to 140,000. I'm going to talk through some of this for the podcast listeners, but 85 to 140,000 Mexican pesos per square meter. That'll take some converting if you're doing dollars to square foot, but AI will help you with that. But that's the most expensive area. Polanco right below it, 65K to 110K, low soil risk, high transit proximity, polished, dinner focused. Um, the Condesa, Roma Norte, Colonia Juárez, those are all in the same area. And the pricing similar, 50K to 85K. They're all high soil risk, transit proximities, medium to high. And these are all lively social nightlife areas. So trade-offs. The Valle, Narvarte, those are similar, 50K to 60K, 65K. Medium soil risk, high medium transit proximity, and those are very residential. De Valle más residential polish, they're calling it. Coyoacán, San Ángel, I'm going to say San Pedro de los Pinos. Those are cost wise 45 to San Angel. They're saying 55 to 80K pesos per square meter. Coyoacán and San Pedro de los Pinos, they're saying 45 to 50 range. And these soil risks are kind of mixed, medium, mixed low. The transit proximity low, giving a little medium. And then the vibe, they're saying culture day oriented. And then the historic center is actually the least expensive. Soil risk is high. And they're saying subsidence. That must have to do with the soil quality. Transit proximity high, and then touristy and chaotic. I felt that there's noise outside we had a hotel we were staying at, Hotel Isabel. It had a lot of noise, street noise. We could hear honking in the morning. We could hear honking at night. We could hear people on a Friday night yelling and music nearby. And our flimsy windows didn't stop much of that. I had to sleep with earplugs. A lot of homeless. There's a lot of begging, panhandling. And there's tons of people walking everywhere, but it's well connected. You're with these historic buildings. There's markets. I mean, it's great, but it just depends on what you're looking for. Okay. There's no single best neighborhood. Best expat community, so largest or big expat community would be your Colonia Juárez, Condesa, Roma. Cultural, historic centers, you go with Centro Histórico, Coyoacán, quiet residential, family-oriented, Narvarte, Del Valle, Portales, Nápoles, San Pedro. Skip these if that's not your scene. Well, you could say that for all of these. Skip them if it's not what you're looking for. Airbnb income. Well, weigh the cap. There could be colonial saturation. I just wouldn't assume, and then you're paying taxes. They have an EVA, I think 16% increase. I mean, you just have to weigh it if that's really what you're looking to do. I think in some places in the US, that's a strategy. You're buying it, you might be there some of the time, and you're going to Airbnb it out the rest of the time. It might not be, well, just consider it. There's a lot of factors there. Earthquake risk. Most of the list is fine with vetting buildings and weighing other factors more. So, weigh other factors more, but it's a consideration. And again, it depends on your worries. If you have night sweats thinking about being trapped in a building, then yeah, make that a priority. Security isn't a big worry. It's mostly petty crime, but just Centro y Doctores, you might not feel comfortable walking alone at night. Just consider those areas. I mean, I've been all over there and I feel pretty comfortable. But again, I'm a male. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's different for different people depending on your proficiency with running or fighting. I guess for me, it would be running. Big nightlife, noise, restaurants. Again, the Zona Rosa, that Juarez, Colonia, Roma, Condesa, genuine walk to metro access. So you're not walking half an hour, but you have good access to metro. Juárez, they're saying Polanco, Doctores, Zapata, Corridor, Coyoacán, and San Angel often don't have good areas. So to consider, and I wouldn't just look at metro lines. Those Metrobuses are great. Sometimes when I'm doing the Google how to get somewhere, they'll say do Metrobus instead. Pure price appreciation. Narvarte, Doctores, Escandón, Nápoles might be the best price gap to peers if that's what you care about. I mean, maybe it's more just quality of life. Earthquake worries, stick to zone one and two. This is saying there's some other factors that you might weigh more. Just make sure the building construction's decent and up to code, and they didn't have issues in 2017. But Polanco's, Lomas, San Pedro, Anzures, San Angel are all good with that zone one earthquake. Security, if that's your top priority, Benito Juárez area, Miguel, Hidalgo, Colonia as well is really good with security. That's a Polanco. I guess that's also looking at Narvarte. Those areas are super good on security. But again, we're mostly talking about petty crime. I mean, don't get scared of Mexico City. It's really a very in the areas we're discussing, very safe city. One rule to take away: never let a neighborhood's reputation or its past appreciation chart substitute for checking the actual building. So they're saying yes, ask for the dictamen estructural, that engineers report on how solid it is for an earthquake. Confirmed construction was done at least 2005 or later when possible. Ask how buildings performed in September 2017 and walk the blocks at night before committing. Walk the areas, make sure the noise, the activity level, the walk to the metro or Metrobús, or, meet your needs. And this would be if you're considering either long-term stays, if you're going to do a long-term rental, or if you are looking at purchasing. I'm Bill Holliday, AIO Financial. We're fee-only financial advisors. We work with a lot of expats or a lot of Americans living abroad. Let me know if you have any questions, comments. Thanks a lot for listening. Bye.